Hello, hello, hello. Who is tilted today? We're back in Orange City 1-2 live, No Limit Holdem. I'm in a bomb pot. I have 10-9 offsuit. I'm in the cutoff. When it checks to the man on my right and he bets 5, I'm going to raise, given that I have top pair on the top board. I make it 25 to go, and the button calls, and then the small blind calls, and the hijack finally gets rid of his junk hand, and we are 3 ways to the turn. This is a little bit of a spicy raise, but I do like to get some money in there when I have top pair. The top board comes a queen, and the bottom board pairs the jack, so this is not especially great for me. I think in hindsight, I probably, when check 2, should just check back. But we are multi-way, and I like to walk the line between bluff and value. This could be perceived as a value bet, given that I still have an effective top pair on the top board. But yeah, to be honest, I don't love this this turn bet. I think probably I should just check and either decide to defend or give up. But I do bet 40, and we do get a call from both the small blind and the button. The river pairs the 5 up top and brings an innocuous deuce on the bottom. Now I finally get the memo and just decide to check and just show that, hey, I only have a pair on each board. It's not that great. The button does have Queen King, and which is bad for me, because I'm like, oh, I lost that board. But then the small blind shows that he has ace-6, so I'm not really sure why he was in this hand. But hey, you know, I'm always happy to chop it up in a bomb pot. That's a good bit of profit to find. If you've made it this far in the video, the YouTube retention graph tells me that you are part of the die-hard fans. I appreciate all of you. I really like, people come up to me in the card room and they say, hey, I've watched a couple of your videos. Like, I like what you're doing. I appreciate that. I need all the encouragement I can get. It takes me a while to produce these videos. But if they're of any help to you at all, just hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you out there on the felt. The next interesting hand, I have 6-3 of diamonds in the big blind. When the button limps and the small blind limp, there's no reason for me to raise here, so I just check, and we are 3 ways to the flop. Yeah, I'm not going to do a lot of raising in limped pots like this. It's just silly. We do get 2 diamonds on the board, so I'm going to check to the button. She leads out for $7, and the small blind calls. This is a pretty standard call. There's no sense for me to raise here. I could easily be up against any Queen X. The turn is a Queen of Diamonds, so now I'm really hoping I'm up against Queen X. I could get a lot of value, I think, out of a queen. So when we both check to the button and she bets for 15, I call, and we are heads up to the river, which is a relative blank. I mean, the 7-6 does come in, but I have a 6. I check, she bets 15, and this is a pretty standard call. She shows that she has just a 9, so obviously I wouldn't really get anything if I raised. She's probably snap folding there. So yeah, we take down a nice little chunky pot, and we're off to the next hand. Alright, buckle up. This next hand is going to be a big pot. When Under the Gun 1 opens for $12 and the cutoff calls, I look down to 6-5 of spades in the button. Having a strong position here and wanting to raise for isolation, I bump it up to $30. Surprisingly, the big blind cold calls, and so that's never a good sign. I've noticed that a lot of times cold callers, especially from the blinds, will be weighted more towards the top end of the range, but not ultra strong like aces, kings, or queens. That they would be incentivized to 4-bet there. When the Under the Gun 1 calls, that price is in the cutoff, so he calls 2. We're multi-way. We do get a fairly good flop here. I mean, I have a pair plus a flush draw, and that's pretty strong equity against any kind of top pair holding. Like, even against aces, that's pretty good. So when they check to me, I feel pretty comfortable putting in a c-bet here. I put in a bet of 45, which is about a third pot. I think in retrospect I could probably go a little smaller given the stack depth of the table. I mean, 1-2 plays pretty shallow most of the time. You know, we're not 400 blinds deep, so smaller bets, smaller c-bets are fine. So when I put in the bet and only the under the gun one calls, he immediately asks for a count before the card comes out, and then snap jams when the 3 of diamonds comes off. This is a pretty standard call, I think. I still have very strong equity, and now I've picked up a smidgen of outs. Well, no, I didn't pick up any outs, but I have 14 outs when he shows the jack queen. This is also a loose aggressive player I've played with before, so he could be doing this with a flush draw himself, which I would be way ahead of, right? Because I have multiple spades, and if he's just on a draw like a queen king, I mean, if he had queen king of spades, that's really bad for me, right, as a combo draw. But you know, if he is the kind of player, I've played with him before, he is quite loose aggressive, so you know, he just has the better end of it here. And oh, we get a jack of diamonds on the river, so yeah, $579 pot, huge pot, and it goes the wrong way. But hey, you know, that's Hold'em. You got to get it in when you got it good. Next up, we're into another double board bomb pot. This is a big one, so take a look. I'm in the hijack with ace jack of hearts. The board is 10-9-7, king jack 4. It checks through to the turn. I elected not to bet because I was being, you know, a little bit more cautious in middle position with a middle pair on only one board. I do pick up a flush draw, so when the low jack leads out for 75, I think this is a pretty straightforward call. It is a pot-sized bet, but I have a nut redraw on the top board with at least, you know, not a terrible pair on the second board. Surprisingly, the button calls as well, so now I'm starting to think maybe my hand isn't as strong as it is. You know, I want to see what happens on the river, and then we'll evaluate. We do pick up a jack on the top board, and the bottom board somewhat bricks out. I mean, I guess a couple of straight draws get there, but yeah, so the low jack jams for 120, and this is kind of a crappy call, to be honest, on my part. I probably could have folded. I didn't feel good about it in the moment. I was kind of showing that I had a jack. I'm like, the button showed ace-7 of spades. I thought he had an 8, so I thought he had a straight somewhere. I misread what he was showing, and you know, ultimately we sorted it out, and I did end up chopping with the low jack. The button missing the flush draw was a big lifesaver for me here. I probably should not have called the turn bet. You know, it's okay to just fold out of bomb pots. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, we chopped this one up with a low jack, and it's a pretty big pot. Next interesting hand of the session, I have pocket queens. I'm under the gun in a button straddled pot. The big blind has raised to 10. So I think a lot of times I'm going to 3-bet here. I'm pretty much 100% going to 3-bet queens in this configuration. So I make it 50. The cold call, the cold caller is the cutoff, which was surprising. And then the big blind called too. So she may be priced in here. I'm not really sure what she has, but we go 3 ways to the flop, which is king 7-6 with 2 hearts. This is probably bad for me, especially when she donk bets for 50. There's just 0% that I'm ahead here, so I'm gonna fold, and I'm kind of relieved, to be honest, that we see the cutoff, then jam all in to cover the big blind after I folded. So now I'm like, yeah, at least somebody here for sure has a king. Ace king is very likely. I think maybe ace king off from the big blind, but they run it out. I didn't catch the run out, but I did see the reveal, and it was actually the cutoff that had ace king of hearts. So I'm surprised he didn't 3-bet me pre, I'm surprised he didn't 4-bet me pre, but hey, you know, he was playing it cautiously. He got a good flop and got it in good against the other villain in the situation. Next hand is a tighter configuration. There's only 5 players, so when the cutoff limps to me, I open for 15 from the button with ace king off, and he elects to continue, so we're heads up to the flop. It's going to bring a 10, a 7, and a deuce, rainbow, and so with this being a dry but dynamic board, I think I can bet a little bit more in retrospect. I bet half pot, and he calls. So we are off to the turn, which brings a jack of diamonds, and he checks. And in this spot, I do know a lot of straights will have come in, but in the moment, I felt like, he probably wasn't that strong. I bet half pot again, just in case. I mean, if he had hit the straight, he probably would have raised off right there, but he folds and we take it down with ace high, so I'm happy about that. Next hand after a table break and a seat change. New cast of characters here, so they don't know what I'm up to. Blowjack opens for a bet of 9, and I elect to 3-bet to isolate. I make it 20, and the small blind doesn't get the memo, so he's cutting out chips to call. And if you see, he's got a pretty short stack, so I think against shorter stacks I should be sizing down a little bit, just to try to get a little bit more value and have a little bit more room to bluff if things don't turn out the way I want. I do get a 9 high flop, which is pretty good, to be honest. Having top pair with a top kicker, when it checks to me, I bet about half pot, about 20 bucks. And there are a lot of draws available here. I mean, tons of weird gutter straight draws and a lot of heart draws, but everybody folds and I take down a baby pot. About 20 minutes goes by and I've been folding for quite a while, so I think that might factor into this hand a little bit. I have ace king off in the low jack and it limped to me. I think the under the gun one on my right limped, and so I opened for 15, and we get a call from the small blind, which is okay, and then the under the gun one decides to call as well. And if you notice, both players are fairly shallow stacked. I think I need to spend a little bit more time studying my shallow stack strategy. I think I tend to bet a little bit larger than I should in those situations. But we see 2 checks to us, and the pot's about $40. I put in my typical half pot bet, which I like to do to try to split my opponent's range. I want them to raise if they have a much stronger hand, and I want them to call if they have a weaker hand. We do see a 5 of spades on the turn, so yeah, some straights get there, no flushes get there, and the small blind donk jams for 36, and I don't have a pair, so if he's got something like 8-9, especially if it's 8-9 of spades, he's ahead. I do fold, and I think in retrospect I might have just called it off. If he was on a flush draw and he missed, I would win with ace high. But I don't know. Leave me a comment. Tell me if you would have called there. $36 into a pot of 116. Next hand of note, we have 10-10 in the low jack with 2 limps in front. I do need to bet here. I make it 11, which I think is a fine size given the relative early position of both the limpers and myself. If someone blows it up from the later positions, I can still get away from this hand. But we do get a call from under the gun, and under the gun 1 is now kind of priced in, so he calls as well. So we're 3 ways to the flop. We get an ace, an 8, and an 8. So that's maybe okay. If there were much bigger aces, I would expect them to 3-bet with some frequency pre-flop. So when they check to me, I bet 15, which is about half pot, and we get a call from under the gun, and under the gun 1 gets out of the way. So now we're heads up, and we've got a pot of just under $60 after the break. And the turn is a 2 of hearts. So now I do have some showdown value. I can't beat an ace, I can't beat an 8, but I can beat a bluff. So when he checks to me, I check back. We get a queen of diamonds on the river, and now he leads out for 25. This is a capable guy. He could be bluffing here, but he could have also just spiked a queen. He could easily have been slow playing an 8. Or just check calling an ace, so I think this is a pretty standard fold. This is already shaping up to be one of the longest videos I've produced yet. Stay tuned in the future, because I've got even more content coming in the new year. We've got multiple limps in front of us. I'm in the big blind. I have king-queen off. I have to bet here. I make it 20, which I think is fair given that I'm out of position and there's several limpers. I do want to put some pre-flop fold pressure on the marginal holdings. So we get 2 calls, one from under the gun and one from under the gun 1, which, I don't love going multi-way this far out of position, but I'll deal with it. We get a flop of 8-8-7, it's rainbow. I'm going to check my entire range here. Even if I flopped a monster like king, queen, this would be a straightforward check. They check it back, and I pick up the jack here. I think I have some slight range advantage now. I think that I can credibly rep the jack. If I had something like ace jack, I might have checked the flop, you know, ace jack, king jack, queen jack, I'll check that flop. So when I c-bet, I do a delayed c-bet, and they both fold, and I take down a nice little pot. This next hand is an example of when a semi-bluff raise goes completely off the rails. I have Jack-8 offsuit on the button. Everybody's limp to me, and I limp. I shouldn't do this. I should not be limping here. I should be raising or folding. Big chunky raise here will take down the pot sometimes, and at the very least, I want to go heads up or maybe two ways to a flop. We do get 9-7-6 rainbow, so I do pick up the open-ended straight draw here with potential redraw to the nut straight if a 10 comes in as well. So if the 10 comes in, I'm really set. But big blind donks for 5, under the gun calls, and I raise to 20. Now, I should have been paying attention because big blind has a very short stack, so he cuts out calling chips, and I think maybe at that point I realized how short he was. So he calls for 20, but he only has like $28 or $30 left behind. He basically called 50% of his stack here. The turn's an ace of diamonds. Under the gun also called, so when they both check to me, I think normally I should just check back and get a free river card. I think maybe in the moment I was thinking I might be able to get a bluff fold here. You know, maybe a draw would fold, but that's not really true. It's not logically consistent, at least. So I bet 30, and under the gun, big blind calls 30, and look, he only has 10 bucks in front of him, right? That's like why I put the graphic down so you could see it. Now, under the gun 1 is still a lot deeper, but she finally does fold, and so we're heads up to the river, and that comes a 9 of clubs, and at this point, he just pretty much snap jams his $8, and I'm like, I can't call, right? All I have is, I have a jack high. I can't call, right? So I fold. It's a huge pot, and it's $8. Well, he tables 8-9 for trip 9s, and she says she had 9-6, so she folded 2 pair on the turn, and then she would have rivered a full house, right? So yeah, it was way off the rails there. In this next big pot, if you're eating while you're watching this, be careful that you don't spit your food all over your screen. This hand is going to go off the rails. It's going to go off the rails in a big way. If you like to eat while you watch these videos, leave me a comment with what you're eating. I'm on the straddle. I look down to a glorious ace-jack offsuit, and I decide to raise over multiple limpers. Now, my sizing was wrong. I raised $35, which is only 6x, and there's multiple limpers. I really need to be putting in a big chunky raise if I've got a strong starting hand on the straddle, right? Like $50, $60 will get a lot of folds. It will yield a bunch of folds, and that's fine when it takes down some dead money. But big blind calls for 35. The guy 2 seats over calls for $30. That's under the gun 1. And then the cold call. We see the cutoff calling for $35, right? So we're 4 ways. This is a huge pot already. There's like $120 plus. There's $130 in the pot. Well, the flop is queen 9-7, 2 diamonds. So I have 1 over, and I have 1 diamond. They check to me, and I bet 50. I shouldn't do that. I should just check. I mean, like, if I check and pick up an ace, then we can evaluate. We can go from there. If a diamond comes in, maybe, you know, there's a case to be made for continuing. But I just, against 3 players, like, I just don't need to c-bet here. So I put in a $50 bet. Big blind calls all in for less, like $25. He hits me with the surrender cobra pose, which, if you're a sports fan, you see that whenever the team gets a bad beat, you see the surrender cobra popping up everywhere. Well, he calls, and the under the gun player calls the 50 as well. So there's a little bit in the side. There's $50 in the side, and there's $220 in the main. I'm in deep shit here. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, this is a bad spot for me. So we get a queen on the turn, I check, and under the gun checks, and I check back. And then we do pick up a jack on the river, so I am going to be ahead of any 9 or 7. I don't think a 7's showing up here. Like, it's never going to be a 9. It's never going to be a 7. So when under the gun jams for about $75, this should be a fold. I should be folding here, right? I just can't beat anything. So I fold, and the big blind shows that he has ace-10 offsuit, so he was just on a wing and a prayer on the flop. And under the gun shows that he has queen-jack, so he made a full house. He turned to set, made a full house. Also, he gave me a big nod. Like, when he looked at his hand, when the jack came off on the river and he looked at his hand, he gave a big nod. It was a big tell, and I kind of knew that I was no good there. Next up, we've got 77 under the gun. I'm gonna open for 10, and we get a call from under the gun 1, and then eventually we get a call from the big blind. And I'll just say, if I get 3-bet here, I can easily fold, but I'm never gonna limp. I'm always gonna open if I'm the first person to put money in the pot. We're 3 ways to the flop. We've got $25 in the middle. Pretty tight configuration, all early position players. The flop comes Jack 10-5, all hearts. Now I should be shaping my theory around flushes, right? You should play for a flush on a monotone board. I see bet 15 when check 2 and under the gun 1 calls, and the turn is a queen of hearts. Now I probably should just stop. I should just check and evaluate, or try to get to a free river, but instead I bet 15 and he calls. Now his range is uncapped, mine is too. An ace of clubs is on the river, and here comes the speech play. Alright, you look in there, and I'll look in here, and we'll each see if we have a heart. Do you have a heart? You've got a heart? Okay, then I'll check. I don't have a heart. I have sevens. Queen. Yeah, queen. Nice. Nice hand, nice hand. You lied to me. You lied. Why you got none? I'm not sure how he got to the river with a hand like this, but I think the speech play prevented him from bluffing at me. Alright, this hand is going to be another big pot, mostly of my own making. I'm on the straddle, in the saddle, it's 5 to battle. When it limps to me, I call like a cattle. We get a king 7-6 board, and a couple of the early position players check, and it gets over to the man in the hijack, and he puts in a bet of $20. Now I do think a lot of times a stronger king would raise pre-flop, so I do decide to jam. In hindsight, I don't love this. I think, honestly, more often than not, I could call and evaluate a lot of turns, or I even could put in a raise, like a min raise. I mean, the bet was $20, so I could make it 60, but then the stack sizing starts to get pretty squeezed. Well, he goes into the tank, he's asking for a count, he's trying to get a read on me. He doesn't, I'll give him credit, he's a strong player. I've played with him before, I know he knows what's up. At this point, I'm like, maybe he does have something stronger. Like, he could have a small set here. Like, if he had a set of 6s, he would think this over. So I'm not too confident. That's pretty good.
I know, it's pretty good.
So yeah, he shows me a king. So now I'm in the blender. I'm in the tank. I'm like, does he have a better king? Wouldn't he snap call if he has ace king or king queen? I mean, if he has king 9 or king 8, I'm really hoping for a call here. I don't think he's ever taking this long with king 7 or king 6. Well, he finally does put in the call, and I'm like, I think he got me kicked. I have a 10, and he shows he has a jack. So, oh man, it sucks to get pipped there, but I almost got a fold out of him. I just didn't know, to be honest, whether I was in there with value or in there as a bluff, and it turns out I was the one who was bluffing, so... yeah, I was like, nice hand, man, good call, and I was trying to, give him congrats and stuff. We get a queen on the turn, and then, we make a 6 on the river, and I was like, good hand, and then they were like, no, you chop, and I'm like, oh, shit, I'm sorry, man, all apologies, I didn't see that the board, paired. I think I was just doing my own head that, I screwed up, and you got me good, and I wasn't really thinking, but we do end up chopping, and that is the end of the session. So, yeah, I appreciate all you guys. Thank you so much. Please leave me some comments and give me some love in the room.